Hello, welcome to BamfordRose and another question of the week. This week we're turning the tables from last week where Steve from Aston 1936 interviewed me. This week I get to ask Steve a few questions and we'll get to look at the great resource that Steve has on the Aston 1936 website and his YouTube channel. So before we go into a bit more detail about what is on the Aston 1936 website and what you've got on your YouTube channel, let's start off by telling us how you got into cars. How come you're a petrol head?
Well, I have to blame my dad. I think like most petrol heads, it starts early, and it really goes back to I was probably about 11 years old. I was like typical 11-year-old kid. I was growing up in Canada, and I was riding around my bike in the summer, and I spotted this, what to me looked like, a burned out Hulk, but it was a car sitting in the weeds behind somebody's garage. And all the local kids, we'd sit in that car, we'd drive 1,000,000 miles an hour. We were all rally drivers in our imaginations. And one night I mentioned this to my dad, and he goes, well, show it to me. And my dad, hopped in the car and we drove a few blocks over to it. There it is, Dad, we're in the alley behind this house. And my dad freaks me out and he goes around to the front of the house and knocks on the door. And a few minutes later, my dad purchased the car and I had a bill of sale in my own name where he purchased this car for me. And I mowed lawns all summer, but it was a 1961 MG Midget Mark I, as it turned out. It was a basket case. Now that I'm a father, I can realize the brilliance in that. This gave me and my dad something to do, kept me busy as a teenager. It got me interested in cars, and very quickly we had it as a runner. I was fortunate in my high school years. There was an auto shop program, a real formal one, where it's like multiple hours a day in the shop, and it counts towards a mechanic's apprenticeship. So I had my own project car. I was able to take that in, work on the brakes, suspension, and then of course in your final year you're doing the engine rebuild. And that really started to develop my car skills. Of course, I was working for all my friends on their cars in the garage at night. I was one of those weird kids that knew what they wanted to do at the end of high school. I wanted to design. I want to be a car designer, and I was dead set. That's what I was going to do. To be a car designer, you need to be a mechanical engineer. So I applied for mechanical engineering, but I wanted to take. I was one of these weird kids. But if I'm going to be a good designer, I better know how to put it to work on them. So I took a gap year between high school and university, and I worked professionally as an apprentice mechanic. My 3 years of high school actually counted as my first 3 years of apprenticeship. And I just needed another year to get my mechanic's license. So I got a job at a shop, did all the grunt work, low man on the totem pole. But I never went and finished my mechanic's license because it was time to get into engineering school. So did my mechanical engineering work, but somewhere along the way in there, I veered left a little bit. I got interested in biomechanics, which is medical engineering. And my career kind of took a left turn at that point. I never really, became that dream automotive designer, but it's still the skills I learned as an apprentice. I've carried with them all through my career. Anyways, that's kind of how I turned into, a car guy and a hobby mechanic.
So at that time, you actually wanted to pen cars and not do the greasy stuff, yeah?
No, that's I draw. I have zero art skills. If I could not draw a curved line of anything. I draw with a ruler. So I'm one of those types of engineers. So I probably wouldn't be designing the exteriors of cars, but I would be right at home doing powertrain, suspension, driveline, diagnostic testing, stats, things like that, but nothing creative with art.
So you obviously had a bit of an engineer inside you then. If you didn't go down the path of auto, what did you get into as your profession?
I worked for about 8 years as a professional mechanical engineer. I relocated quickly from Canada to California to get rid of the winter. And so I worked for some engineering companies. But along the way, this was the 90s. And, I'd be in engineering and I'd usually open my mouth and I'd say something like, well, it'd be great if the engineering department could share files with the CAD department. Back then, the engineers didn't do the drawing, the CAD people did. And I had some great bosses and they'd all inevitably just say, great idea, do it. So I started to become the de facto IT person. So I was doing engineering duties and IT duties. But it was during those 8 years, I also sort of discovered what I would call my entrepreneurial spirit, also known as I don't work well for other people. I need to be my own boss. So it was about the late 90s, and my sweetie and I, we decided we could probably make it if I took the leap of faith and started my own consulting business, where I was doing mechanical engineering consulting and IT consulting. And fast forward 23 years, I now work at an IT consulting company that focuses on healthcare industry. And I still use all my engineering skills, problem solving wise, but I'm an IT guy, professionally right at this point, which kind of helps me with the Aston 1936 stuff because I'm not afraid to try my hand at writing a blog article or work with digital cameras or computers for video editing. So, but yeah, I'm a professional IT guy now.
So you spent those early years probably with an MG correcting rust and corrosion, and then you've got into the big wide world of work. If you would have worked for an auto company, which is your local one at that point, or who would you have liked to have worked for?
I love to plan and build things. I think it would have been cool if I'd found a pathway to become a powertrain engineer or some sort of an engineer at an automotive company. And honestly, back if I was trying to remember what I was thinking back in those days, but Porsche was it for me. I was a big Porsche fan. I read all I could. I was in Canada growing up as a kid. You didn't see many Porsches. So that would have sort of my dream is, to be a designer or an engine engineer or powertrain engineer at Porsche.
So it sounds like there's a few years between those early days and when you got into the seat of your Aston Martin. So what is your car career history leading up to the Aston?
Well, I started out with a great one, right? My 1961 MG Midget Mark I. I had that car for 43 years. I just sold it a couple of years ago after, essentially I'd done everything restoring it possible. So that was always a constant in my life, but not my daily driver. The early years, maybe the formative years, I had quite a considerable collection of beater wagons that included Vauxhall Vivas. I had two of those because you needed a parts car to keep the one car working.
I know that only too well.
I had some Volkswagen Beetles. My first new car, though, back in the mid 80s was the Honda CRX. Basically I'd started university, I needed reliable transportation. So I started my relationship with Honda. Then I had Hondas for about 28 years. Acura Integra GS 4-door in black, had the best transmission I think I've ever shifted in my whole life. That shifter was terrific. Then I had a Acura TL 6-speed. And then I got an Acura TL all-wheel drive that was paddle shift through over 300 horsepower. So I was pretty much a Honda guy over those the majority of my family life years. But then back in 2013, I went, well, I want to start to experience more cars, get out of the Honda line. I started looking at different things. Along came my Aston 1936, my 2005 DB9 Coupe, which is my daily driver. It's my only car.
So you decided to take a leap out of the Honda. What was it that really attracted you to the Aston? Why get into the Aston brand? No doubt, running a bit of Brit Exotica over in your neck of the woods is going to be a bit of a tough thing if things go wrong.
I'm not too smart when it comes to things like that, but I had the MG my whole life, so I was kind of used to struggling through the British car lifestyle. I was looking for something different. You know, I'd been driving sort of mainstream Honda stuff, but they're everywhere. So I started doing what most people probably do. You know, I drove some BMWs, I drove some Porsche. But out here in California, you can't swing a dead cat without hitting a BMW. They are everywhere. So I wanted to find something maybe a little bit more unique, and you know, enter Jeremy Clarkson and the Cool Wall. And you know, I discovered Top Gear around that time and was like, well, you know, man, that car looks great, right? So of course it's this, you know, it looks sexy, um, but it was out of my reach, you know, kind of at that time. But that kind of planted the worm, and I started to think, well, maybe I could afford a used one. And back then the market was maybe 90,000 US dollars, and I kind of just rolled around in my head for a couple of years, and I kept, you know, occasionally I'd jump on the websites and see what they were going for. And, you know, a few years later with depreciation, they were down to what I could afford, just barely. And so I really started to search for the car I wanted. I like cars with color. You know, my DB9 here is Merlot red. And after I'd sort of seen a number of cars, I started looking for a Merlot red Vantage or DB9. And eventually I found one, and I wanted a California car so I would have no rust issues. My MG was just a rot box. So I was adamant I would find a pristine body car. And I found my DB9 with 15,000 miles in San Diego. You know, it was love at first sight. So I guess it was looks and Clarkson that really drove me to the brand. I wasn't like a lifelong Aston enthusiast.
So it was love at first sight. That was the first Aston you looked at, was it?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I was already butt in the seat driving a V8 Vantage in Merlot red, 6-speed stick with the black and tan interior. I'd found the perfect car for me originally, locally. And I was like, money in my pocket, was at the dealer, but I want to take it for a 45-minute test drive, just to really be sure, you know, that there's no issues and that I like this car. And I came back and got out of the Vantage and was like, my back was aching. I was, the suspension, the ride for me, I just discovered at that point, I was probably for a daily driver, I was more interested in a GT car than a little bit more performance-oriented Vantage. So I walked away from that deal. It wasn't because the car was bad, it was because my back wanted something cushier. So that sent me on another year's journey. It took me another year to find a Merlot DB9. So, you know, my journey to find Aston Martin, I think, is pretty similar to what I think other people's. There's a lot of, you know, people just like me that were probably looking at Porsche or BMW, and then now they're realizing that the used market for the Astons is attainable, right? So they could go and get their dream car. They could get that, you know, cool wall car that they've maybe lusted after. And so I think there are a lot of people that have entered into the second or third, you know, hand ownership market here that have stretched to the top of their personal budget. And that's why they're hungry for information about your videos that talk about, you know, the right buying decisions for the cars. And, you know, they come over to maybe my website when they're trying to solve some of the issues because they can't dealer service their cars. So I think that's really what's made, you know, both of our YouTube channels probably get more popular, is that there's a lot more owners just like me that can't afford a brand new one.
So when you first got your Aston, did you have ideas about creating the resource that you have done then, or did it stem from that learned experience of support being a bit difficult if you don't go to the franchise dealer?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I certainly had no aspiration to do you know, the website when I bought the car. I think I wanted to learn how to do some of the basic stuff on it. You know, ultimately, I tell other people now, it's just a car, right? 4 wheels, got brakes that work pretty much like other cars. But I was afraid of it, you know, at that point. It's really an expensive car to work on. You know, my first year of ownership, I took it to, there's no dealer here, and, you know, I'm in a million plus person city in Northern California. There's no Aston dealer. The best thing I could come up with was a Maserati dealer that had somebody that serviced Astons in the past. So I took it there for an annual service. And I just remember, the sticker shock going, I just paid $2,200 for an oil change. And the mechanic in me is like, what did they do? Is the oil like milked from the nipples of, golden cows or something? I don't know. So I was determined that when the second annual service was due, I was going to figure out how to do it myself. And that was an eye-opening experience because I was like, well, I should learn how. And I had about a year to get kind of geared up for it. And so I started trying to research it on the internet and went to YouTube, like for most things. And there was zip, nothing. If you want to change the engine in a Honda Civic, there's 10 videos to choose from. If you want to change the oil in an Aston Martin, there's nothing. And what pissed me off, frankly, was the #1 hit on YouTube when you searched Aston Martin DB9 engine service or something was this disgruntled mechanic, this independent who was—
I've seen that video. I know what you're going to say.
And he's bitching and moaning. It was an engine that imploded, probably starved of oil, probably hadn't had the dipstick recall done to it. So they starved out the rear cylinders or something, or who knows. But this guy was just dissing on Aston constantly. And what killed me was there was like 16,000 views. This was what people were watching. And if you've ever, there's no way to get a video taken down on YouTube. So the only way you can deal with it is to drown it out with other content. It really irritates me is that Aston Martin probably wasn't monitoring YouTube. They didn't realize that this was the #1 search result that was coming up for the car at the time. So I got involved. I started to, do my own videos, and fast forward 5 years and 150 videos later, and you won't find Mr. Mechanic Guy until page 3 or 4 of this, the search at least. And I've drowned him out, and I'm quite pleased about that. I never really thought it would catch on to the degree it did. And I'm pleased it has, because so many owners, like I talked about, are new to this issue and they're hungry for that information. But there's a secret sauce to Aston 1936. It's not just the YouTube videos. I put a lot of effort into writing a blog article, a website article to go with every one of the videos, and that's the trick to burying everything else in the search results. Is because in a YouTube video, we might say a lot of interesting things, or in the video, but Google can't index that. It can't search index that. So by doing the written article, every little word I write gets read by Google. And so when somebody searches, Aston Martin DB9 wheel nut torque, I almost guarantee you the Aston 1936 blog article is going to be the first hit, because I'm the only person who ever wasted the time in their life writing that out on a website. But Google reads that, and then I post the video as a link in the bottom of every article. So I think that's the secret sauce, is that it's helping people all around the world in their own languages as well, right? My website is viewed by 126 different countries, and people in their own language are pecking in, searching for wheel nut torque, and it's Google doing the magic, connecting them to that article, which connects them to that video and that piece of knowledge.
Viewers of BamfordRose will recognize Paul Hicks from the owner chat that we had a while back. And Paul's just popped in, and Paul is also a great fan of Steve and Aston 1936. So just in between a break that we had there, I asked Paul if there was any sly questions he wanted to get in and ask Steve. And Paul has asked, okay, so you've got your DB9, you've decided to do its second service and find out more about it. But that can be quite intimidating. Like you've said, it's quite a high value car, and understanding what to do on it mechanically, electrically, can be pretty difficult. So You know, are there jobs, are there tasks that intimidate you on the car? How do you handle that?
Well, thanks for the question, Paul. Yeah, there's all sorts of things that intimidate me on the car. And, I draw the line often on things that I will and won't do myself. Um, Usually the deciding factor is it a skill I have or don't have, or is it a skill that I want to learn? Um, and if it's a skill I want to learn, one of the things I struggle with most is, well, where do I learn it? And uh, I'm always looking for resources on the internet myself for, how to do a particular task as I'm assessing whether or not I'm going to do it as an article or do it myself. But there's a vacuum of knowledge, and I'm hoping to fill it myself with one of the Aston articles or a video. So it really breaks down to, uh, I'm looking for people to provide me with knowledge. I looked at the BamfordRose videos. I get ideas and some paths from that. But I'm always, trying to sponge up the knowledge that's available out there. So if you're out there and, can share some of your wisdom with me as a knowledge sponsor, please reach out and let me know. Someday I hope that maybe I'll catch the attention of Aston Martin, and maybe they'll open up their doors a little bit for me so that I can access some of their internal resources. I'd love to talk to the people that worked on the car, like you. And I'd also, maybe I could get access to the technical hub, and, I'd like to talk to the person that wrote the central information module, programming, and learn, what was sort of the logic in some of that. So, I'm interested in all aspects of the car. So back to Paul's question, though, I am absolutely an automotive mechanic hobbyist. And for everybody out there, I am not a professional mechanic. Mike is a professional mechanic. And there is a line where you should decide, I do not have the skills to do this job well. I only have one car to experiment on, and I don't want to destroy my car. So I weigh that off when I'm thinking about it. Things I usually outsource are the tire work, four-wheel alignment, leave that to somebody that has the equipment. That's all specialized equipment and skills. Paint work, I'm not going to be a painter. Those people are expert and artists. Interior work like leather work and trim work, I can reglue a little bit of leather, but I'm not going to, restitch, my dash panels. Air conditioning is another one of those specialist things that you'd just be, I think, silly to try and do yourself. I take my car to the dealer when it's recalled. There was a battery cable recall a while back. Certainly any seriously complicated electronics issue, I'll take to a dealer specialist or a specialist, because the dealer or the specialist, they've got the gray hairs, right? They've worked on multiple cars. They've got experience sorting that out. They've got the AMDS diagnostic tools. They've got other modules they can probably plug in to see if that eliminates an issue. So they can do many tricks that a hobbyist like me can't, and I understand that. They probably also hate me because I really only bring them the hard problems. They're not going to make any gravy profit off changing the tires in my car or changing the oil. But, oh yeah, by the way, my door module PCM needs to, need to be reflashed or something. That's something I leave for them.
Well, I think I can solve your problem. If you ever want an internship, then I'm sure that BamfordRose can offer some help in trade for improving your knowledge.
Oh, excellent.
So if you do have to go out to a garage, whether it was franchised or independent, what is the quality of care, the level of knowledge, workmanship on Brit Exotica? Is it well looked after, like a homegrown brand would be, or is it a bit difficult even at specialized shops to get tricky problems fixed?
I think the blunt answer is it sucks. It's really difficult to get good service on an Aston, at least where I live in Northern California. when you think about it, California's got 35, 40 million people, got 700 miles of coastline on the Pacific. We're as big as a country, yet we only have, I think, 3 or 4 Aston dealers. They're, of course, like in San Francisco, Los Angeles, San Diego. And even in those major metropolitan areas, you'll never find a standalone Aston dealership. They're all part of a luxury brand, collection, Bentley, Lamborghini, McLaren, Ferrari, or something like that. And so when you think about the service shop, they're working on all those different marks. And my experience has been there's one Aston master mechanic in those shops. And now those guys, those individuals are terrific, right? Everyone that I've met has been very knowledgeable, but the overall dealer experience, I come across, at least speaking just for myself, I feel like a second-class citizen. I roll in with a 15-year-old Aston Martin, and somebody's rolling in with a McLaren P1. They don't roll out the red carpet for the Aston guy. And maybe that's just my ego or my own personal insecurities or something. But my dealer experiences haven't been very positive. Like most owners, I'm worried about getting hit in the pocketbook. And I went in for the battery recall, which was free. It cost me $5,000 to get out of there. And I asked them while I was there, could you reflash the update any of the ECU modules? I'll be happy to pay you for it. And they did. And then all my door modules stopped working properly. My mirrors started freaking out. The mirrors started turning in and out nonstop. And their solution was, well, we can't back up the firmware. We can't change back the revision of the software. So you're going to need to put in new door modules. And, oh, by the way, we don't have those in stock. We have the left, we don't have the right. So you need to leave the car with us for a couple of days while we FedEx in the part. And, and your tire pressure sensors are toast, so we should change all of those. So it was $5,000 to get out the door, for my free battery recall. And I felt like I've been taken for a ride a little bit, that they should have known the firmware should have led to the door module stuff. I wish I had a BamfordRose near here. There aren't many independents that I've discovered yet. If you're out there, please reach out to me.
So on your DB9, I can see from what you've got on your channel, on your website, that you have had a go at all the major jobs really on a DB9. You've got wishbone arms there, plugs and coils, got the breather circuit, and a few other repairs that you've done. There's a fantastic series on transmission oil changing. So what's next for Aston 1936 channel? Have you got subjects planned, or do you wait for something to go wrong on your own car, or have you got requests from your viewers to cover certain things?
So all of those things, you absolutely nailed how I sort of approach it. Originally, it was just things that would break on my car, or I would get interested in. But now, a lot of people reach out to me about certain things that they're worried about. The tick of death, primary cat replacement, stuff like that. But the transmission series that you mentioned was the most requested thing I've ever had. I probably over a year or two had 100 people ask me to do a series on that. So that helped motivate me to put together such a thorough series. That's probably the most thorough one I've ever done. What's popular to break? I also think about all the common service things. If you look at a 1-year service interval guide, like what's supposed to happen in a 1 year and what's supposed to happen in a 2 year, that's actually been the menu I've been working from. I've been working my way item by item down those lists. I still have a few things on those lists, like, every 4 years you're supposed to do a coolant drain and flush. So I haven't done that yet. My power steering fluid needs changed. I think I have a little bit of steering judder, when it's cold, and I'm pretty sure I'm not running Pentosan fluid yet. So I plan on doing an article on how you can, change your fluid and make sure you've got the right additives. Everybody thinks my car is in perfect condition, but it's a 15-year-old daily driver, and it has its series of niggles. I could probably use some advice from you, Mike, on what is probably a collection of issues that I think other owners are going to start to be getting right now too. I'm going to call it the door series. I have wind whistle coming from my door somewhere that I haven't nailed down. I have my gas struts aren't working very well, so my doors are hard to open, and slam close. So I'm going to do a door strut replacement. My hinges, I think, creak. When it's colder out, when I open and close my door, I get a bit of just a creak. So I don't know how to lubricate the hinge pins. The big thing probably is sort of been doing performance improvements to my car. I've been trying sort of bolt-on things. If you've been watching any of the videos, I've done a airbox delete kit, which probably isn't really worth it for most people. Did the secondary cat delete, which was a great upgrade. Love the sound change from that. I'm doing a sort of a stage 1 ECU reprogram right now and dyno testing that. I'm about to publish the results on that. But I could see doing a couple more upgrades to my car. They're bolt-on that I think anybody else could do. I'd love to do the suspension upgrades. Your videos are what kind of got me interested in this. Is maybe I still have the original Multimatic dampers tucked away in there, and I'd like to try maybe converting my car over to the Bilsteins and learning how to do that.
Yeah, that sounds really cool. The Bilsteins retrofitted to DB9 is a fantastic modification to do. So we touched on the importance of the website earlier, and we've just said about some future content for it. But I wanted to talk about some content that you've got on your website at the moment, which is the most concise cost of ownership catalog going. It's very commendable that you put such effort into it. Although if there were some wives watching, I'm sure there'd be some guys that would be persuaded perhaps that Aston isn't the car to have. It's quite a high cost per mile if you follow all of your every single input through, from insurance to tires to depreciation. So it's a fantastic outline of the cost of ownership, the real cost of ownership. Can you tell us any more about it?
Yeah, well, I guess that was a labor of love that spawned from me having that question myself. And when I was a prospective owner, I was trying to track down that information. So I can imagine there are literally hundreds of people right now, they're thinking about getting their dream car and an Aston Martin, and they're going to the forums and they're posting, hey guys, I'm thinking about getting one. What's it really cost to run them? And it would drive me crazy, now being an Aston owner, to see the answers that would show up on these forums of, oh, it cost me $500 a year to run mine. And I'm like, what? But I don't think the person that answered is necessarily lying to the guy. I think they're just kind of oblivious to all the costs that go into owning a car. And so I was curious for myself to figure out what that number was. I'm an anal retentive mechanical engineer. Of course, I have all this stuff written down in the books or at home or something like that. So I just fired up a spreadsheet and pulled all the data together over 3 years, the first 3 years of ownership. The number was pretty big. If you haven't seen the video, go watch it. But I did it in a way too, so that any owner could factor out things they didn't think applied to them. Oh, what's the cost of insurance? Well, just put your own number in there. Or, oh, you're not going to drive it as a daily driver. They could just adjust the number and work it out for themselves, what it would really cost to own the car. So I broke it out by insurance, planned maintenance, unscheduled maintenance, fuel cost. Worked out my fuel mileage. So I put a lot of effort into that, and I was quite surprised easily by far my most popular video. It's been viewed over 1 million times. So YouTube picked up on that for some reason and promoted it as one of the sort of generic supercar videos. I think there's people that like to just gawk at Aston Martins. Oh, look at those guys paying, so much money for their car. But if you watch the whole video, and I bet you those people didn't, I also do the exact same analysis for my Acura, my Honda. And just to compare, all cars cost a ridiculous amount of money. So you can compare how much more it might be for an Aston. So watch the whole video if you tune in to it. But I've literally had hundreds of owners thank me for that video. People that either steered clear because they didn't want to go that route because they might have been stretching right to their budget cap, but they're just feasibly, they can't afford the insurance, they can't afford the gas, if it was going to be their daily driver. And many people that have bought the car much more informed about what the costs are going to be down the road. Or maybe they use it as a shopping tool when they're going out and buying a car. I think one of my suggestions is maybe look if you can stretch for a 2007 or newer instead of a 2005. You might get a few more features, and those early year niggles have hopefully been eliminated from the car already. So anyways, it was a labor of love. It's been 7 years with the car now, so I am thinking about doing an update, because my costs have not continued at that same level. They've dropped.
Just talk briefly about your Aston 1936 Merlot Red. Is it a keeper? Is it with you for life, or do you see yourself one day trading on to another Aston or something else?
Oh, she's a keeper, I think. Yeah, especially now that the respray's done. The paint was getting pretty tatty on the original paint, but with the respray done on it now, it feels like as new any of the other Astons, fit and finish wise. I have a little worm going in my head though, like probably many DB9 owners. Well, if the right DBS presented itself, it might be neat to pick up a DBS. If anybody wants to donate one and then have me do videos on how to fix it, please do.
So you've got your Merlot red paint, you've got your sandstone with iron ore interior. That's a really, really nice, striking color combo. Are there any other Aston color combos that do it for you?
Absolutely. There was I think it was Monaco blue with almost a full white interior, but the white interior had the Monaco blue stitching and a very coarse stitch. Oh my God, that car was gorgeous. And even for Merlot red, I love that black and tan interior combination, but it's black with a burnt orange. I don't know what the official Aston leather color is, but it's like a really dark orange color. That's a terrific looking color combination as well.
And I've got some fun rapid fire questions for you. So what's the number one thing you like about your DB9?
I think most people would gravitate to the looks, but for me, it's the sound.
So if it is the sound, then on your Aston Martin touring drives that you go on, is it music on or music off?
For me, it's music off. The V12 soundtrack the whole way.
Okay, so if it would have been music on, what music would it be for you?
I'm an Eagles fan, so Hotel California, Life in the Fast Lane. I'm also a blues fan, and one of my favorite blues songs is Sweet Home Chicago, but done by the Blues Brothers band.
So you've got some great touring routes around where you are. Myself toured Route 1 from San Francisco down to San Diego. But what is your favorite touring route where you are? Yeah,
there's a lot of great routes. There's also a lot of people in California. So, getting someplace that you can open up your car is a bit tricky. But one that I drive repeatedly is I live in Northern California in Sacramento. But my sweetie and I, we do a monthly brunch run between here and Napa Valley. We go to a restaurant there for brunch. And Highway 128 is this, it's about probably an hour and 45 minutes of absolute to die for twisties. California oaks overhanging the road. You're going down these tunnels of oak trees. You're basically out there with the guys on bikes that are riding. They're out for the Sunday. So you got to go out early on a Sunday morning, but you're so rewarding to get out there. And it's just, turn after turn, and you can just enjoy the car. And it's a beautiful stretch of road. So Highway 128.
Apart from Aston 1936, what's the most car you've ever or currently lusting after to take on that tour down that route?
I guess I'm going to have to go back to my what was the poster on my wall as a teenager, and Porsche 930 Turbo in black, full whale tail, never driven one. And bonus points if I could track one down with the 935 slant nose, the steel slant nose front end, with the vented louvers, on it.
For a second now, I thought you were going to answer that with the MGR V8, but well, it's probably upsetting for Aston that you never answered that question with DB11 or a new car, DBX maybe. So what do you think of the current crop of Aston's new designs?
Well, I've driven the new DB11 a few laps on a track day. I think it's a technically superior car in every respect, but it's missing its soul. The DB9 still has hand-built feel to it. It has a soul in it. When you drive the car, it feels different than driving a new Toyota Camry or new Honda. When I drove the DB11, it was an excellent car, but I could get into a Mercedes and get the exact same feel. And there wasn't something that was unique to make it an Aston to me. So I was, I don't mean to disappoint any of the current generation Aston owners. I think they're terrific. If it turns you on, terrific. But for me, I'm more interested, I think, in early Gaydon era cars, the DBS, the DB9. I think those have a soul and they speak to me. You mentioned the DBX, and all I'm going to answer is an SUV, really?
So if you're not a fan of SUVs, then another trend is the EV. Are you an EV sympathizer or a diehard petrol head?
You're trying to get me into trouble. I am a diehard petrol head. If you think back to what was my favorite thing about the Aston, which was the sound, what is the one thing that is 100% eliminated in the EV? The sound. So it removes a huge component of the driving experience.
Well, thank you very much for joining us on a question of the week for BamfordRose. It's been really interesting to get a deeper insight into your ownership experience of the car and what prompts you to make the content that you do. I know the content is used widely by lots of people, so good job and keep it going. There are a couple of issues, certainly DB9 tick and misfire, primary catalyst failure, and a few other technical aspects that I'd really like to follow up on with you if you'd like to join me in those videos.
Absolutely, that'd be great.
And before we wrap it up, have you got any final comments?
Yeah, well, I'd like to say a warm thank you to all the viewers and readers of my content. The encouragement I get from you, the feedback that I get from you is overwhelmingly positive, and it's my paycheck. And this gives me a chance to kind of say thank you right back to you, and I'll keep doing the work in the future.
Well, thanks very much, Steve. You've been very generous in the time you've given us today, and thank you very much.
All right, thanks, Mike. We'll see you in the next video.